Hello, everyone, and welcome to 31 Days of Flutter. So good to see all of you today, all the eager developers and the fluent Flutter enthusiasts here in this group. So, yeah, once again, welcome to the first ever live session of our 31 Days of Flutter. So, hi, my name is Aibon Akunri. I'm your community lead here at Flutter Meghalaya. So, along with some other core members, we will be conducting a month-long session where every week we're gonna go through each section of what Flutter can do. So for today's session, Manoj will be taking the most important part, which is introduction to Flutter and how we're gonna set up Flutter. So before we get started, let me just give you an intro to what Flutter is for those of you just starting out. So Flutter essentially is just a framework built by Google, a very powerful cross-platform framework for that matter, where you can compile your app both for desktop, then to mobile, even to web, even to embedded devices from just a single code base. Right. So why should you use Flutter? So for us developers, the most important thing is time, right? So when using Flutter from a single code base, we can deploy to different platforms, which saves us time and also development costs. So that's why Flutter, it's currently the most trending cross-platform framework, which has just recently surpassed React Native, for that matter. And things are going to get more exciting as Flutter moves on, as Flutter finally completes its final stages where they're going to move from the Skia framework to Impeller. So just to give you an intro of what to expect for the entire month, let me just go through a few slides here. It's just a few slides, so don't worry, not too long, of what's to be expected for this awesome month of Flutter. So first off, again, welcome to Flutter Meghalaya. So for most of you who are not familiar with the group, again, on my board, the community lead, we have Manoj, who is assistant leader, who will be presenting shortly. We'll be giving a presentation shortly on introduction to Flutter. Then we also have Kershan, Lucy, Safi, Justify, and Christopher, who are supporting us in managing the community and helping us research and content. So yeah, again, 31 days of Flutter. Sorry. So we're going to be developing 3 apps for a matter. So the first app is just a simple tourism app where we're going to showcase the basic fundamentals of Flutter. So essentially, like how we're going to create layouts, how we're going to render images, how we're going to render content, and how are we going to use Flutter's basic layouts such as rows and columns to create a beautiful UI. The next is a simple to-do list app which showcases state management. And the third is we're gonna extend what we've built in the first app, which is tourism app, and we're gonna make it dynamic. So essentially, what we're gonna do is we're gonna pull our content from REST APIs using API calls, right? So we're gonna host our content such as images and content on the cloud, and then we're gonna pull and render them into our Flutter app. So for week 1, we have introduction to Flutter, where we're just going to go through the fundamentals and how you're going to set up Flutter, how to build your first Hello World app. That's what you call it, using Flutter. In Flutter, we have the counter app, which just shows you a basic template of how to use state management, where you have a button, and when you click on the button, it just increments the counter, which then refreshes your UI to show you the latest counter value. So, example, if you click, it presses 1, 2, 3. It slowly increments the value. Again, Manu is going to be taking over this. Why are we going to use Flutter? Everything's a widget and all those good things here. So for week 2, we're going to be focused mostly on Dart programming. So what is Dart? Dart is officially what fuels Flutter, right? So what makes Flutter what it is because of the Dart programming language. So Dart, I think so if you work with Java, it's similar to Java, but most of the analogy, what they say is it's a cross between JavaScript and Java. So if you know OOP programming language, or if don't worry, if you don't know OOP, we will be handling that. We will be taking care of that, and we will be giving you a full intro into what OOP language is, what are the main features or main points of OOP languages, such as inheritance, polymorphism, extra. So we're also going to go through Flutter layouts introductions, such as because Flutter is mostly, if you look at Flutter layout, they are essentially made of rows, columns, and containers, right? So you just have added styling like padding and margins. So with these, what do you say? So with these few recipes in your hand, you can create like complex dishes. So just 3 or 4 ingredients in hand, you can make complex dishes just by using rows, columns, containers. And we also have user interaction and input, whereby if you click on a button, what happens when you listen to a button click? You listen to, if you have an input element, if you, for example, if you have a form and you have an input label, and you start typing, what happens? How do you access the value which has been inputted by the user? And next we have navigation, whereby we can move from one page to the next page. Yeah. So yeah, basic features, but powerful features nonetheless. So for exercise 2, same thing. We have hot reload. The most important part is we also have hot reload and hot restart, which is one of the more powerful features of Flutter. Whereby, for example, hot reload and hot restart. If you look at hot reload, whereby if you make any changes in UI and you click on save, your changes are instantly reflected in the app. So, for example, if you have a button and you maybe change it to red and you save, the code automatically watches for any changes and your button instantly changes to the blue color. So for week 3, we have state, right? So in Flutter, we have concept called state, whereby we have widgets which are stateful versus stateless widgets. So stateful widgets are any widgets which you hold state, right? For example, what is state? State essentially any data which needs to be changed later on, right? So for example, if we go back to the counter app, we need to record how many times the value has been incremented, right? So for example, if you click on the particular button and you increment the value by 1, if the initial value is 0, then it becomes 1, right? Then if you click on a button, it becomes 2, 3, 4. So that's state. And you also have stateless widget, which doesn't hold any state, but mostly are used for presentational logic. So presentational logic is mostly your UI, right? It's just a presentational layer. We will go through in depth for that. Don't worry if it sounds too complicated. Don't worry, it's not as intimidating as it sounds. So basic state management with our packages. So basically we're using set state. So local data persistence. Now we have exercises. I think so. Manoj will also be handling this, where we are going to build a basic to-do app, which will showcase the state persistence, the state management capability of Flutter. Then for week 4, we have networking. That's where I'll be taking over, and we're going to make API calls. As I said earlier, we'll be housing our data in the cloud server, and we'll be pulling them using REST APIs, or what do you call pulling them through API calls through a URL. And then we're going to pass that data in such a way where we can render them in the Flutter UI. We're also going to cover about simple animations Flutter, such as hero animations. Then we also have the animated controller. We have animated containers, for that matter, where we're going to be showcasing, where we're going to create a button, and we're gonna apply an animation to it, where we have the button move from the bottom screen to the top screen. So, for example, if you navigate from one page to the next, then we can have all these features and animate from the left corner to the right corner, or from the bottom to the top. Basically, slide in, slide out animations, but with interpolation. And for week 5, we're going to introduce different approaches to state management. Because in Flutter right now, the default state management is using set state, but we also have provider, get, X, block, redux, and report. And we're going to showcasing them. We're going to showcase the difference between all the packages and when to use and when to not use them. Flutter layouts, basically for mobile, responsive layout actually, because as I said earlier, right, Flutter compiles both to web, and for web, the number one design which we need to think about is responsive design. How do we make them responsive for both tablets, PC, and the mobile layouts? So we'll be showcasing how to use, almost similar to breakpoints in Flutter. We're going to make the layouts responsive. The next session, I guess, after a while, we'll be using Firebase, where we're going to introduce Firebase authentication, database, and storage. And also, in later sessions, we'll be making a full-fledged app, which is a pet adoption app, where users will be able to send or upload photos of any pets which needs to be adopted, and users can then vote or can contact the user if they want to adopt a particular pet. Yeah. So yeah, so stay tuned for future sessions because this seems pretty exciting. Thank you everyone for listening. I will be handing over to Manoj now to officially start the session. Thank you all.
Hello, everyone. I hope I am audible and visible. So, today we will be starting with Flutter. So, basically, it will be just an introductory session today whereby we go through the how to set up the Flutter and what are its advantages and why we are actually driving towards it. So, before we start, let's see. Is my screen visible? Hello.
Manish, I can see your screen.
Your is
I
my
can see your screen.
screen
I'm not sure about the other.
okay? Okay, let's see. Okay, think something is going wrong. So let me present once again. Just give me 1 second. Yeah, I think it is visible now. So hello
Now
everyone.
we can see your screen.
Yeah. So hello everyone. So today we'll be starting with the Flutter. So the basic about the first that we will start with is yeah. So introduction to Flutter. So what is Flutter all about? So Flutter is basically an open source UI kit from Google. With Google, one thing we can say is things are very simple. So Flutter will be quite simple for all of you, and it looks amazing. I hope all of you have used Google products, and if you see their UIs, their way of implementing things, and how things are treated by Google, it's very simple for the end user. So with Flutter also, you can expect the same thing, whereby things will be very simple for the starters, those who are starting with their journey for programming. So the official site for Flutter is flutter.dev, whereby you can find all the documentation as well as all the things related to Flutter. And the basic idea of using Flutter is because it can build apps for both Android, iOS, macOS, Linux, Windows, as well as for web application using the single code base. So isn't it amazing? Like in our earlier days, what used to happen? Suppose I wanted an Android app, then I had to go with something like Java, Kotlin, C++, whereby you should have a completely different code base. For iOS, I will go with something like C Sharp or Swift or something like this. And for Linux or Windows, I have to go with C++, C, and all those different things. So, if you want a common application which can work in all the different platforms, you had to maintain the codes in that particular language, which was very complex. So, with something like Flutter, you can use the same code base, the same almost the same structure to make an apps for all the different platforms, and that app will work anywhere. So, moving ahead, let's see why to use it. So, as I said, it provides a single code base. Development is really fast. Uh, with simple things, you can start the development. The app performance is quite good, unlike some of the other cross platform frameworks like React Native and this Ionic and other things. It used to use something known as Java Bridge, whereby JavaScript codes were converted into some other things, which was taking a lot of time. But with something like Flutter, things are very fast. So it gives you a performance incentive whereby if you use Flutter, your application will perform much faster. And then the UI of Flutter is very, very good. It provides a simple, easy to use interface built out of the box so that you can start developing your application with much of a hustle. So basically, with Flutter, you have two design standards. There are others also, but basically the primary ones are material design and Cupertino designs. So with material design, that is being followed by Google. So you get the Google kind of design standards. And with Cupertino design, you get the Apple kind of designs whereby the look, the overall look and feel of the app is similar to what is being provided by the Apple. So these are built into the Flutter code base, so you can start using it right when you begin. So moving ahead, let's see. We have heard so many things about for Flutter. So now let's see how to start using Flutter. So if you go ahead, so this is the official link whereby you can get started. It's flutter.dev/docs/get started/install. If you go to this site, you will find the documentation as to how to get started with the Flutter, starting with downloading of the SDK. Since Flutter is a cross-platform thing, so whatever is common for all the platforms are given by this Flutter SDK. But if you want to develop for say and for Android platform or for iOS platform, you need to have their respective SDKs as well. Why? You might be wondering, okay, we have this Flutter SDK, we have this Android SDK. Why is it required? So Flutter SDK is basically for writing the Flutter code, but for Android SDK, because at the end of the day, your Flutter code will get converted to your Android code, and that Android code will finally run in your Android phones. Similarly, if you are building for iOS, you need your SDK for iOS. So that SDK will be available in their website, and then from there you can download and compile application for iOS also. Suppose if you want to build for Windows platform, then the Visual C++ platform is there whereby you can download and here as well. So you will find it quite amazing. So Java is basically Dart is basically like, if you see the arrangement of and the structure of the Dart is kind of like JavaScriptish. So whereby you can see that on the left you have your keys and on the right you have your values. So it follows that kind of standard. So once we start, you will be able to make out what I'm talking now. So if you are using Android platform for development, so I would recommend you to download the Android SDK directly from the Android Studio. Just download Android Studio. Then in the settings section, you will find that Android SDK written, and then click on Android SDK and download the latest Android SDK. So I'll be showing you a little. And then if you are into the iOS thing, then you can download the Xcode, and then you can start with the development. But one thing, be ready that if you want to develop for iOS, you need a MacBook. You cannot develop iOS apps on Windows or Linux platforms. But if you want to develop for Android or like say web, then you can use Mac as well. Also, it works. I think like the environment of iOS is little bit different, so they don't allow. So moving ahead, yeah. So in Flutter, everything is widget. Now you might be wondering what is widget. Okay. I will say just widget is something which we can see on the screen. It has its own properties, which we will see, and then with which we can interact with. So everything on Flutter is a widget. Whatever you see visually on the screen is a widget. And if you have multiple components, definitely you'll have multiple things on your screen. So each of those things will be in itself a widget. So one of the classic example of a Flutter app, and that I can say that I think Google implemented. The first app that was production ready was Google Pay. I hope all of you are using Google Pay or have used Google Pay somewhere or the other. So that was the first big app that Google themselves developed to show that Flutter is actually a workable language. And via that, they were able to minimize their manpower in some ways. The same code base was being used by the same sort of people to develop a complete full-fledged application. And Flutter widgets have something called as build functions, whereby via that build functions, they build that complete widget and it is shown in the screen. So if you want to learn more about the Flutter widgets, you can go to their YouTube account. The link is there. I'll be sharing the PPT in the group so that you can go through. And then in that PPT, you'll find a link to the YouTube channel. And from there, you will find lots and lots of widgets. So here, unlike our, say, web development or native app development, whereby things are limited, here you have a lot of different things. Then widgets are basically of two types. One is stateless and one is stateful. Now, don't go into too much of these things for now. We'll be coming back to this once again in week 3, whereby we will go in depth into all of it. So, I always say that programming languages are not some foreign languages. Here, whatever is written has some meaning to it. So, I always say whenever you don't understand something, just break the words. So here, if you see, number one is stateless widget, and the other one is stateful. So just break the words stateless. So something which doesn't have state. So that's like stateless. And you have stateful, something which is full of states. So basically, that's all for now. We will again come back to it in week 3, and then we will go in depth into it. So let us start with the thing. So firstly, I will stop this so that I can share with you something. Is it is the screen visible? Hello.
Yes.
Okay, okay. So here you can see this is the official site of Flutter, whereby you can see how beautiful the UI looks. So this is how you can make the Flutter app. Here you will find a lot of things are written about Flutter. And then if you go to develop and learn section, you can read through all the documentation. And then if you go to docs and go to getting started, on the left hand side, you can see getting started and go to install section. You'll find here the platforms that are supported for installing Flutter. So as of now, Windows, macOS, Linux, and Chrome OS is officially supported by Flutter. In near future, there might be some other things, but then as of now, these are the platforms which are supported by Flutter. So ideally, I suppose majority of you will be using Windows. So here I will show for you Windows. So if you go to Windows section, you can see the system requirements. So if you are not having those sort of requirements, then it will be little difficult, but it will be manageable. So in case if you find some difficulties, then you can reach out to us. We won't be able to help you with the providing the systems, but with your existing system in whatever ways we can, we will guide you as to how you can optimize and run your code. So here if you see, you have your Flutter Windows 3.10.6 stable version. And if you are using say Git, you can also download via Git. I think somewhere here they should provide the Git link. Yeah, here if you see, you can also use Git from your command prompt, and then you can install Flutter. Once you have installed this Flutter zip, then extract it, keep it somewhere, and then find the environment variable. Is it visible? Environment variable, is it visible? System properties, environment variables.
No, no, no.
Okay. Let me just see what is the issue. Okay, somehow it is not coming. Just give me 1 second. Is it visible now? Is it visible, the environment variable? Hello? Hello? Hello?
Yes, Manoj, we can see. We can see. Yep.
Okay. Okay. So here if you see, you can just to go to your start menu, type environment, and then you will find this menu, whereby you can see that we have something called as path. Path. So if you go to the path, you can add your path where you have stored your Flutter SDK. What this will do, this will actually allow you to control the Flutter directly from your command line. Whereby with this, whereby with the Flutter commands, you can run, build, or create new projects. And then I would also recommend you to use the command flutter doctor once you are done with the installation, so that you can actually know what if your flutter is working properly or if there are something which needs to be done. So here ideally everything is given on the screen. You can go through this, and in case if you find further problems, you can reach out to us in the group. We will definitely try to help you out. Further, for downloading the platform SDK, say suppose we want to build Android application, so we will also require Android Studio, via which we can download the SDKs. So you can go to Android Studio's page. It is developer.android.studio and download the Android Studio from there. Once it is downloaded, once it is downloaded, okay. Once it is downloaded, you go to the plugin section, search here Flutter, and then install that plugin. So what this will do, this will allow Android Studio to build Flutter apps. And then once that plugin is installed, you can go here. Yeah, you can go here on the top right hand side and you can see SDK Manager, whereby you download the latest SDK that is available here, and you also download the Android SDK command line tool. In case if you have powerful system, then you can also download Android emulator. But if your system is not that powerful, it is little older or has lesser configuration, then I would recommend you can connect your phones directly and then run the app directly on your phone. That way what will happen, your system won't slow down and you can develop the app in a better way. And also make sure you download this Android SDK platform tools. These are mandatory. So this Android SDK command line tool, Android SDK platform tool, and the SDK platforms are mandatory for you to download so as to be able to develop the application. In case if you want to download Android emulator, you can download, but if your system is slow, I would recommend connecting to your phone directly and then running it. Then, if you want to start the Flutter project from the Android Studio, here you can see you have your new Flutter projects. You can click on this. You can give some name to it. So I will give week 1, 21 days. Flutter. And then you can also give here the JDK that you will be using, or the languages that behind the scene your Android will be using. So you can just create the project. It will take maybe say 1 or 2 minutes depending on your system. And then you will have your Flutter app. So here if you see, you have your files. Okay, I think I clicked on something wrong. So okay, let me start over again. Something is going wrong. Okay. Okay. New Flutter projects. New project. Yeah. And from here you can give your group ID and artifact ID. And then you can create your so from here, first of all, you need to give your SDK. Yeah, I think I made that mistake, so that's why it was not coming. So yeah. So this is what I was. So here we will give week 1, 31, week 1, 31 of and then you can give with what you are making. So here we are creating the application, and then from here I will select Java, and then I will select here create project offline. So here if you see clearly, so we have something called as platforms, whereby you can see Android, iOS, Linux, Mac OS, web, or Windows. So these are the platforms which are now officially supported by Flutter, whereby your Android, you can build Android, iOS, Linux, Mac OS, web, as well as Windows application. So whatever is checked, your Flutter application will support that platform. If somehow, suppose initially, we don't check this, later also you can do it in a way whereby you can add support for this platform via some commands, which I'll be showing later. So here, as of now, we'll select all the different things and we will create the project. So here we are starting with our Flutter project. So it will take 1 or 2 minutes for it to build the application. So here you can see it is slowly downloading all the packages. Here if you see in the bottom, it is downloading all the packages. Yeah. So here, if you see, you have your first Hello World, or or in Flutter we have the counter app ready. So this is like Hello World kind of application ready. And if you see here on the left hand side, you have your project structure ready, whereby in the beginning we clicked in the platform supported, uh, we clicked on Android, so Android folder is there. We clicked on iOS folder is there. We clicked on Linux, so Linux folder is there. We clicked on Mac OS, so Mac OS folder is there. We clicked on web and Windows, so those folders are also there. But ideally, we don't require this app, this folder to be accessed directly. In special cases, you will be going into the four respective folders and making necessary changes. But our main working folder will be this lib folder, whereby inside this lib folder you will find your main.dart. So in the beginning, I told you Dart is a combination of, say, JavaScript and Java. And some of us, we might know that in Java, main function is where our application starts. So here also in Flutter, main is where our application starts. This main is the entry point to our application. So in the lib folder, you will find this main.dart by default. And with this main function inside the main.dart file, this will become our like entry point to the Flutter application. Here, you can also see some other things like uh, pubspec.yaml. This is where we will write the configurations of our Flutter application, whereby we can set the environment, which SDK versions will it be using, the dependencies that our application depends on, and the folders or any other fonts or any other thing that you are using in your application. So this is where things will come. Then we have some other things which are automatically generated. You don't need to go into all of it for you to understand the project. But as of now, just read something about this, what you can do here or what you can do here. And we will also do one thing. I will just run this application so that you can see what is the default thing that is being created by the Flutter. So let me start the emulator. So okay, think something is going wrong with the emulator as well. I think something is going wrong with my emulator. It's not starting. Let me try to start my emulator. Something is going wrong. Or let me create a new emulator altogether. So here, if you go to the right hand side, device manager, or here on the top, you can see this kinds of button. You can go there. You can click on create device, and you can click on any of the things. So on the phone, I will create a resizable experiment. So I will click on this, next, and I will click on finish. So I think this will, yeah. So here, this is starting a new emulator for me. Hmm. Let's see. The emulator is starting. It's taking some time.
Manoj, while we wait, we can also try to run it in Chrome.
Okay, sure. I think it is starting. So yeah, till that time we can also run it in Chrome. So we know that it also works in the web platform. So here you can select Chrome web, or you can select whatever browser you have, so that you know it works on browser as well. So I clicked on run. So here you can see it is launching the application in debug mode in the Chrome browser. Okay. Till this point, is there any problem, or if you think you have not understood by the time this runs, you can speak, so that we also know that if we need to repeat something or not. Hello. Yeah. So if you see on the screen, this is a window of Chrome which has our Flutter code running. And here, if you click on increment, it just increments our counter right in the middle of the screen. Right in the middle of the screen. So if you click on this, it increments this. Similarly, if you want to see something which is magical about Flutter, is that it supports hot reload. So here, if you see, if I make this is ideally Material Design 3, which is currently being followed by Google. But if I comment out this and I click on save, it again builds. And now you will see that your UI is little different. Now if you see, okay. We give something like primary swatch colors dot say blue, then you will see that the overall look and feel of the app will actually change. You see, look, this has directly become like Material Design 2, which look like our earlier, like say Android uh, design pattern. So with simple one or two clicks, you could actually change the entire look and feel of your app, and via this, across the uh, across the board, you could actually change the look and feel of the application. And here, if you see, most of the designs that we are seeing here are completely responsive. So things are mostly taken care by the Flutter platform itself. So you have to make minor changes here and there, but all in all, you require less of an effort. So now, if we see if our what do you say emulator is running or not. Running devices. Okay, where is yeah. So if you see now, let us run this on our uh, emulator also, so that we get a glimpse of it. So for running it in the emulator, you go here, you select your emulator with the same name. It will come here on top, and then click on run. So in the bottom, you can see our application is building up for the emulator. Okay, building up. Yeah. Till this point, is there any question or something you want to ask us? You can definitely share. Hello.
Mike, I think if you have any question, they can post on the chat, and by the end of the session, they
Yeah,
can
yeah, yeah, definitely.
will monitor the chat if there's any question, and we'll let you know.
Okay, okay, sure, sure. So let us wait for it to run. It first time it might take 1 or 2 minutes for you to run extra, because like it will download some packages and all other things in the background. But once you are into it, then things will happen little faster. And then it also depends on your um, like laptop, desktop, whatever you are using. So how much powerful is it? If it is powerful, then it will work much faster. So here we can see our uh, Flutter app is being installed in the emulator. Yeah. So we also have this in our application. So in our emulator. So here also, if we click on this, so here if you see, it also increments. So this is kind of hello world counter app for Flutter. Some more thing that I would like to show you here is uh, inside this main function of the Flutter, we have something called as run app, inside which we have something called as stateless and stateful widget. Earlier, I told you something about stateless and something about stateful. So since here our this Flutter application is incrementing, so it is knowing the current state and then incrementing based on that. So that's why we have a stateful widget. Otherwise, if your things are completely static, it doesn't change, it doesn't move, it doesn't do anything. It just shows you something. Then you can go with stateless widget as well. It will do the work. But in most of the apps, you will definitely require some of the dynamic contents or some things to move or something to look good. Then in those cases, we will be using stateful widget. And also inside this widget, if you see, there is this build function. So whenever something is built on the screen, then there's this build function will be called. And this build function will render everything on your screen. And in the beginning, we also talked about like two design standard. One is material design and one is Cupertino design. So if you are using material design, then here you have to give material app. So it will follow the standard of the material design. The look and feel your app would be following the material design provided by the Google. Or if you are using the Cupertino design, which is provided by the Apple ecosystem design standard. So here you can use your Cupertino app. So this is completely subjective. So some might like Material app, some might like Cupertino app. So whatever you like, you can use it. So ideally in Material app, you can use this Material app. If ideally by default, Google Flutter provides us with Material app, so you can use this Material app. Yeah, and rest of the things, like whatever you see here, these are kind of like widgets, whereby if you hover over all of it, then you will see that everything here is a widget. If you see this, all these are just widgets. All these are just widgets, stateful widget or stateless widget, whatever it might be. But here, if you see, this scaffold is also a widget. This app bar is also a widget. This text box is also a widget. So depending on how you arrange this on your screen, you can use it accordingly. So now we will go to this. So we have checked some of it. But one more thing I would like to show you. If you are not using Android Studio, then you can go to something like, say, yeah, you can go to VS Code. Here also you'll find a plugin. You can go here in the extension section. You can search here Flutter. Right in the top, you'll find the official plugin of Flutter. It will be by dartcode.org. You can download this. You'll have all the functionalities of Flutter into your VS Code. And here also for creation, you can give Control Shift P. So this will give you the command palette. And from here, you can again start your Flutter application. So I won't go through the process all over again. You can explore yourself. Yeah. So here we saw how to create the Flutter app and the lib folder where our things are there. Whatever code that we write, we will be writing inside this lib folder only. PubSpec YAML file, which holds our configurations, dependencies, and all other things. The main.dart, which basically works as an entry point for us, and the build function, which builds our widget. And we have also seen how to create the Hello World projects, and we have also run it. Moving ahead, some of the things that you can try this week. And if you find any difficulties, you can drop messages in the group so that we can help you out in whatever ways we can. And yeah, you can start. So download the Flutter SDK, set up everything, download Android Studio, download the SDKs of Android, and then create your Flutter app and run it. So some of the other things that we will be going in the next session, but I will just give you a brief introduction today so that you can try exploring something, is this widgets, some of the basic widgets. So here you can see some scaffold. So in our application, if you have observed, in our application, yeah, here, if you see, we have something on top, which is an app bar. We have something floating here, which is floating action button. So this tree kind of structure is provided by us, but by this scaffold widget. So it is kind of like a placeholder where you can place all your app bars and everything, and this automatically decides how it looks like, which color it takes, and all those things. You can definitely customize, but without doing much customization, without writing much of the code, this scaffold widget will provide you some basic functionality. And yeah, we have our app bar. It is this uh, top. It is this top header kind of thing, which works as our app bar. I think in most of the application you will find app bar somewhere or the other, some kind of customization. And we have something called as the text widget, this one, which can be used to show this kind of text in the screens. We also have some kind of container, so which is also a widget in itself, but it holds other widget. So you can use container to hold multiple widgets, and you have something called a center widget, which is basically used to center align. So here also in our counter application, you can see by default it is center aligned. So it is wrapped inside our, if you see here, center widget. So then we have something called as column. So ideally, if you see in our Flutter application, we have a widget and we have the child of that widget. So we have a widget, it has its child. So ideally, most of the things, most of the widgets will have one child only. But sometimes if you want to show more than one content on the screen, say suppose you have 10 images one after the other on the screen, then we can use something like a column which will hold multiple things. So here also you can see that that column has something known as children, which is holding multiple text boxes for us. Similarly, if you see the row here, so this also holds, but this holds in the horizontal direction in a row kind of structure. And padding, as the name suggests, gives us some padding from the top, from the right, from the bottom, from the left, wherever you want. So these are some of the basic widgets, and I think this you can basically understand because what I believe is most of the programming languages are written in English. So if you don't understand whatever the widget does, just look at the name, break the word. This is app, this is bar. So it is some kind of bar in the app. So you can basically relate it in that way. So column is some kind of column, center will center, align things. So that way you can just relate things and you can start exploring Flutter. One more thing is Flutter also provide us the ability to use some kind of dependency. Suppose most of the things are already provided Google, most of the widgets and all those things. But in case if you want some more dependencies or if you want some more things which you want to use in your application, you can go to flutter.dev and install those packages in your application. And you can go to the Flutter devs official YouTube channel. There are a lot of things whereby you can learn and you can explore. Some of the references, and thank you. I think that's all from my side for today. Is there any question as of now? Okay. In case if you have some more questions, you can drop your messages in the group so that we can answer your questions. In the next class, Kirshan will be taking the next class. So there he will give you a gist about some more widgets, some more different things. and then we'll learn more. So thank you.
Ivor, your mic is off.
Actually, you're still on mute.
Okay, I think Ivor may be having some problem. So thank you very much, Manoj, for that long 1 hour session. So while we wait for Ivor to give the a vote of thanks, so I'd just like to add that we will be sharing all the links and also the different slides that we have presented today in the group and also the different content. So if you still have like different questions when you are trying to maybe set up the Flutter environment, everything for your computer. And if you have any problem, you can always send a message in the group. Me, Manoj, Ivor, Safi, Lucy, Damien, and Jazify will be there. So Ivor, is your machine working?
You're still on mute. We can't hear you. I think you must have a problem with your microphone.
Ivor, you can join via your phone.
Yeah, I think that would be a good solution.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. So sorry, I don't know why my machine is acting up quite a bit today. So anyway, I just wanted to thank Manoj for the very insightful introduction to Flutter. I guess my favorite part was when he deployed both to the web and to the mobile devices. I think so that still gets me. Like the first time I started Flutter, that was the wow moment for me as well. So anyway, thank you so much for all the participants. Thank you to all the core members who had partaken in this session. I hope we'll see you again next on week 2. That will be the 8th of August. And as what Krishan mentioned earlier, so this is, don't take it as just us giving you a workshop. Okay, we're learning together, so please partake in any questions, please engage with the content and with any exercises or with any code examples that may be shared with the group. If you have any questions, you know where to find us. So anyway, I'll see you again next week. Thank you, everyone. Good night.